It was just another busy Saturday afternoon at a small-town diner when something happened that left everyone stunned. And trust me, you're not going to forget this. A young black family walked in, just hoping for a good meal like anyone else. But instead of a warm welcome, they were met with cold stares and an unexpected confrontation. The waitress, without even a second thought, asked them to leave. No explanation, no excuse, just flat-out discrimination, right in front of other customers. You might be thinking, wait, did that really happen in 2025? Yes, it did. And what happened next turned the whole place upside down. But here's the part that's really going to grab you. The boss saw the whole thing. And the decision he made in that moment, it didn't just surprise everyone in the diner. It shocked the entire community. You clicked on this video because you want to know what someone in power does when confronted with blatant racism. And I promise you, you're going to get your answer. But it's not as simple as you think. There's a twist in this story that will challenge your expectations, stir your emotions, and make you question what justice really looks like in everyday life. Stay with me, because every moment of this story builds up to a final move that left people speechless and went viral for a reason. You'll meet the waitress, the family, and the boss. But what you don't see coming is how one bold decision can flip everything upside down in a matter of seconds. You're about to find out how one act can turn a situation of hate into a powerful message of hope, but only if you're ready for full truth. So don't skip, don't click away, because right after this, it all begins with what the boss did next. The diner, nestled in the heart of a bustling small town, had always been a hub of activity. Locals frequented it for its hearty meals and the warm, familiar atmosphere. The walls adorned with vintage photographs told tales of generations past, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, inviting patrons to linger a little longer. On this particular Saturday afternoon, the sun cast a golden hue over the town, and the diner was abuzz with its usual weekend crowd. Families gathered for their weekly brunch. Friends caught up over pancakes, and the clatter of cutlery blended harmoniously with the soft hum of conversation. Amidst this lively backdrop, a young black family entered the diner. Their smiles radiated warmth, and their eyes sparkled with anticipation of a delightful meal. They were dressed casually, the father in a crisp shirt, the mother in a floral dress, and their two children, a boy and a girl, in matching outfits that hinted at a special occasion. As they approached the hostess stand, the atmosphere subtly shifted. Conversations paused momentarily, and a few heads turned. The waitress on duty, a young woman known for her efficiency, glanced at them briefly before averting her eyes. She approached with a forced smile and, without any greeting, informed them that the diner was full and they would have to leave. The family, taken aback, looked around the diner. Several empty tables were clearly visible. The father politely pointed this out, but the waitress remained firm, insisting that those tables were reserved. Sensing the tension, the mother gently suggested they find another place to eat, hoping to shield their children from the discomfort. Unbeknownst to them, the diner's owner had been observing the interaction from his office, which overlooked the main dining area. He was a man in his late 50s, with a reputation for fairness and a deep commitment to his community. He had inherited the diner from his parents and had always prided himself on maintaining its inclusive and welcoming environment. Witnessing the exchange, he felt a surge of disappointment and concern. He quickly made his way to the dining area, approaching the family just as they were about to leave. With a warm smile, he introduced himself and apologized for the misunderstanding. He assured them that there had been a mistake and personally escorted them to a comfortable booth by the window. The waitress watched this unfold with a mixture of surprise and apprehension. She had not anticipated her actions being challenged, especially not by her employer. As the owner returned to the counter, he requested a private conversation with her in his office. Behind closed doors, the discussion was candid. The owner expressed his disappointment and emphasized the diner's core values of respect and inclusivity. The waitress, initially defensive, eventually acknowledged her bias and the inappropriateness of her behavior. She admitted to harboring preconceived notions and agreed to undergo diversity and sensitivity training. Meanwhile, the family enjoyed their meal, touched by the owner's intervention and the genuine hospitality extended thereafter. Their experience, however, left a lingering sense of unease. The father, an active member of the local community, decided to share the incident on social media, not to vilify the diner, but to highlight the subtle forms of discrimination that still persisted. The post quickly gained traction, sparking conversations about implicit bias and the importance of standing up against injustice. Many lauded the owner's prompt action, while others shared their own experiences, revealing a pattern of similar incidents in various establishments. As the story spread, local news outlets picked it up, and the diner found itself at the center of a broader discussion on racial sensitivity and inclusivity in public spaces. The owner, recognizing the opportunity for positive change, organized community forums and workshops, inviting experts to educate both the staff and the public. The waitress, now actively participating in these initiatives, began to confront her biases and engage in meaningful dialogues. Her journey of self-awareness and growth became a testament to the power of accountability and the possibility of transformation. The family's experience, while initially distressing, became a catalyst for change, prompting the community to reflect, learn, and strive for a more inclusive environment. Their story serves as a reminder that even in moments of discomfort, there lies a potential for growth, understanding, and unity. In the weeks following the incident at the diner, the small town became a focal point of heated debates and profound changes. The story of the waitress's unjust treatment of the black family spread far beyond social media, quickly reaching local news stations and even making its way to national headlines. The diner, which had once been a humble establishment, became both a symbol of hope and a battleground for the community's values. The owner, now thrust into the spotlight, found himself facing a crossroads. The diner had always been his family's legacy, a place that stood for unity, community, and acceptance. But as the public's eye grew sharper, he realized that keeping the peace and preserving the diner's reputation was no longer enough. He had to make a stand. The conversation around racial inequality, which had started with the family's Facebook post, escalated quickly. What had begun as a local discussion now became a movement, and the diner, whether by design or accident, became its epicenter. There was an unexpected twist in the situation that no one saw coming. A local business coalition, mostly made up of small business owners, came out to publicly defend the waitress. They argued that she had been overwhelmed and, in her frustration, had made a mistake, albeit a grave one. They claimed that the family's post had caused irreparable damage to their community's reputation. While many supported the idea of addressing bias and inequality, a vocal minority believed that the incident had been blown out of proportion, arguing that it was just an isolated incident in an otherwise tight-knit town. The growing division in the community triggered a series of events that would change the course of the town's future. At the forefront of these debates was the family who had endured the mistreatment. They had gone viral, their story picking up steam not just on social media, but also through grassroots organizations advocating for racial equality. With the eyes of the world upon them, the family faced an unexpected pressure to act. It wasn't just about them anymore. It was about everyone who had faced similar discrimination, every individual who had been silenced or overlooked by systems that often didn't acknowledge their pain. The father, whose voice had initially been one of reason, found himself torn. As a pillar of the community, he had spent his life advocating for understanding and unity, but now the very people he had once trusted were turning against him, accusing him of fueling a narrative of division. The weight of that accusation began to wear on him. Could he continue fighting for a change in a community that now seemed so divided? Could he repair the fractured relationships while still holding on to his beliefs? These questions consumed him as he worked tirelessly to balance the demands of his family, the larger racial justice movement, and his place within the town. At the same time, the waitress, who had initially been defensive when confronted by the owner, found herself in a battle of her own. She had agreed to diversity training, but as she participated in these sessions, something unexpected began to happen. The more she learned, the more she realized how much of her life had been shaped by unconscious biases, how her upbringing, her environment, and even her well-meaning intentions had been steeped in cultural blind spots. She was no longer just a part of the story. She was beginning to see herself as an agent of change. Yet, this realization came with its own set of challenges. Would the community, the very people who had once respected her, still view her as trustworthy after this revelation? Could she ever make amends for the damage caused by her actions? And, most importantly, Could she live up to the standards of empathy and understanding that the community now expected of her? But just when it seemed like the town was reaching a breaking point, the unexpected happened. A video surfaced, one that changed everything. It wasn't a video of the incident at the diner, nor was it footage of the family's experience. No, this video was taken by a regular diner patron, a young woman who had been quietly observing the commotion from a corner booth the day the family was asked to leave. The video was grainy, shaky, but in it, the waitress was seen muttering something under her breath as she asked the family to leave. It was inaudible at first, but when the footage was slowed down and analyzed, the words were clear. This place isn't for people like you. The impact of this video was immediate and explosive. The video went viral in a matter of hours, spreading across news outlets and social media platforms. The community, which had been divided in its response, now found itself on the brink of a larger crisis. The waitress's words were undeniable. This wasn't a mistake. This was a clear indication of deep-seated racial prejudice. The controversy that had once seemed like a simple misunderstanding had now taken on a darker, more insidious tone. The diner's owner, in a difficult position, made a bold decision. He called for an emergency town hall meeting. This meeting wasn't just for the residents of the town. It was open to anyone who had been impacted by the incident, whether directly or indirectly. This was his attempt to offer a platform for the community to voice their pain, their frustrations, and their hopes for the future. It was a gamble. Would the town come together in this moment of turmoil, or would it fracture beyond repair? The town hall meeting was scheduled for the following week, and tensions were high. The family who had been wronged by the waitress were preparing to attend, knowing that this would be the moment that either healed or deepened the wounds of their community. The waitress, too, knew she had to show up. She had spent days reflecting on her actions, and despite her fears, she knew that facing the community was the only way she could begin to atone for what had happened. As the day of the meeting approached, rumors swirled throughout the town. Some speculated that the family would demand justice and call for the waitress's termination. Others feared that the owner's decision to call the meeting would only stoke the flames of division further. No one knew what to expect. But one thing was clear. This wasn't going to be just another town meeting. It was the beginning of a reckoning. The night before the meeting, the father of the family sat at his kitchen table, staring at his phone. The weight of the decision ahead was almost too much to bear. His family had already gone through so much. They had been hurt, humiliated, and vilified by some. But now, they were at a crossroads too. Should they continue to push for accountability, or should they let it go and try to heal the wounds of the past? Could one meeting change everything, or would it only make things worse? The stakes had never been higher as the day of the town hall meeting finally arrived. The air was thick with tension. The small town, once quiet and unassuming, had become a battleground of ideals, beliefs, and values. In the weeks since the incident at the diner, everyone had picked sides. The community was split, families were divided, and even friendships that had lasted for decades seemed to be hanging by a thread. As the sun began to set on the day of the meeting, a storm of uncertainty loomed over the town. Was this going to be the day that healed the wounds of the past? Or was it going to be the moment that shattered everything they had once known? The diner's owner, standing at the front of the community center, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The walls of the room, which had once felt so familiar and welcoming, now felt cold and unforgiving. He had seen his community come together to celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, and countless other milestones. But now, he was unsure whether the community he had known for so long would be able to come together at all. He had called this meeting because he believed it was the only way to truly address the issues at hand. The town needed to confront what had happened, not to sweep it under the rug, but to face it head-on with honesty and courage. The family who had been wronged by the waitress sat in the front row, their faces a mixture of determination and exhaustion. They had been through so much. They had been humiliated, dismissed, and even vilified by some members of the community who had tried to downplay the significance of the incident. But they had never wavered. They knew that this was more than just about them. It was about the larger fight for dignity, respect, and equality. They had come here not only for justice, but for a chance to change the course of the town's history. The waitress sat in the back, her hands trembling in her lap. She had spent the last few days thinking about everything, The video, the words she had said, and the impact of her actions. She had no excuses for what had happened. She had wronged the family, and now she had to face the consequences. But there was something else within her, something that had started to grow since that day. She wasn't just ashamed of her actions. She was angry at the system that taught her to believe certain things, to act in certain ways, without ever questioning why. She had been a part of a problem much bigger than herself, and now she had confronted, both in front of the town and within herself. As the meeting began, the room fell into an eerie silence. The owner stood up to speak, his voice steady but filled with a quiet urgency. He spoke about the importance of community, about how they had all come together through the years, and how they had built something strong. But now, that strength was being tested. "We've always prided ourselves on being a community that accepts everyone," he said, his words measured. "But we've also ignored the fact that sometimes that acceptance doesn't extend to everyone equally. It's time for us to recognize that we have a lot of work to do." The crowd murmured in agreement, but there was a tension in the room. Not everyone was ready to accept the truth. Some had come with their minds already made up, unwilling to entertain the possibility that their beloved diner, their safe haven, could have been a place of prejudice. Others were eager to move forward, to find healing, but they didn't know where to begin. The complexity of the situation seemed to weigh on everyone, as if the answers were just beyond reach. Then, the father of the family stood up. The room grew quiet once again. His voice was calm but firm, carrying the weight of everything he had experienced. "We didn't come here to start a war," he said, looking directly at the waitress. "We came here because we believe in something better. We believe that this town can be better. We didn't deserve what happened that day, and no one should have to face what we faced. But we're not here to tear anyone down. We're here because we want change, real change." His words hit the room like a wave, and for a moment, it felt like the entire community held its breath. The waitress looked up, her eyes meeting his. She felt a surge of emotion, guilt, yes, but also gratitude. He wasn't attacking her. He was offering something far more powerful, a chance for redemption. This was no longer just about what happened that day. It was about something larger, something that could change the course of their town's future. "I made a terrible mistake," the waitress said, her voice breaking the silence. "I let my biases speak before I let my heart. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to be better. I want to change. I want to be a part of the solution, not the problem." The crowd was silent. It wasn't just her words. It was the sincerity behind them. She wasn't asking for a second chance. She was asking for the opportunity to prove that she could be more than the person she had been. And in that moment, something shifted in the room. The tension, while still present, began to ease. The town began to talk, not just about what had happened, but about how they could do better. The conversations were difficult, but they were necessary. The family's pain had become the catalyst for a larger conversation about race, privilege, and bias, and while no one had all the answers, everyone was finally listening. The waitress, too, had begun her own journey of self-reflection, and she knew that this was just the beginning. She had a long way to go, but she was ready to start. As the meeting came to an end, there was no grand resolution, no perfect ending. The community hadn't suddenly healed, and the scars of what happened weren't erased. But there was a sense of hope, a sense that they were finally on the path towards something better. It wasn't easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but the first steps had been taken. In the days that followed, the diner began to change. The owner implemented new training programs, not just for the staff, but for the entire community. The conversations that had started in that room continued, as people slowly began to confront the uncomfortable truths they had avoided for so long. And while the journey was far from over, something had shifted. The town had been forced to face its demons, and in doing so, it had taken its first steps toward healing. The family, while still grieving the hurt they had endured, found a new sense of peace. They had fought not just for themselves, but for everyone who had ever been wronged. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they also knew that the story of what had happened would not be forgotten. It would live on as a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is a potential for change. And as the waitress continued her journey of growth, she found that redemption was not about erasing the past, It was about learning from it, owning it, and using it to create a better future. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of inner strength and resilience. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never forget your worth.